Hello, and welcome to In This Together 2023. I'm Patricia Thrushart, co founder of Poets Against Racism and Hate USA, and we are delighted to be a co sponsor of this poetry reading along with our colleagues from Poets Against Racism based in Nottingham, UK. I'd first like to thank PAR USA's other co-founder, Debbie Allen, for all the work she's done to prepare for this event. You won't see her on the screen tonight, but she is very busy behind the scenes, providing the technical expertise to support our live stream. Thank you, Debbie. Now, during this event, being held on the anniversary of the murder of George Floyd, you will hear works that explore the issues of hate, of bigotry, and racism. These are tough, sensitive topics, and the emotions they evoke can be challenging, even overwhelming. We ask that you all be prepared for images that might upset you. And of course, most of all, we ask that you open your hearts to the message the poetry brings. At the end of the event, we'll point you to resources that can help us all act as allies and combat racism. So tonight we'll start with an invited speaker, then hear from 4 poets, and then wrap up with a panelist discussion reflecting on what we've heard. I want to introduce one of our panelists now, and that is PAR UK's co-founder, Manjeet Sahota, joining us very late in his day from Nottingham. Since 2016, when he founded PAR, he has performed his work throughout England, and he has assisted in the planning of the Nottingham Poetry Festival, which is underway now. His mission is, in part, to spread the words of unity, humanity, and love. I'm looking forward to his thoughts about the poetry we'll hear tonight later in the program. But now, it is my pleasure to introduce our invited speaker, Dr. Michelle Torregano. Dr. Torregano is an associate professor in the Department of Education at Pennsylvania Western University. She is a graduate of the Pennsylvania State University, where she earned a Doctor of Philosophy degree in curriculum and instruction with a particular focus on language, culture, and society. Her research interests are educational policy for underrepresented students, multicultural education, and preparing pre-service students to engage in urban classroom settings. Dr. Torregano is an advocate for social justice and a champion for diversity, equity, and inclusion issues on campus and in the community. She is currently researching the First Amendment and its relationship to academic freedom in the academy. A native of New Orleans, Dr. Torregano earned her bachelor's and master's degrees from Xavier University of Louisiana, the nation's only Black, Catholic, and historically Black college and university. She loves to cook, listen to jazz music, and share the rich culture and hospitality of the South. We're delighted to have you. Welcome, Dr. Torregano.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I am honored to be here with you this evening. As Patricia said in her introduction, I am unequivocally an advocate for social justice. What's good for me personally is not all I care about. Tonight, on this 3rd anniversary of George Floyd's murder, I am saddened by the lack of progress in our country. The Black Lives Movement that began as a result of George's murder was not just a moment, it was a movement. But unfortunately, the dominant culture, the oppressors, the white nationalists, still exist, and people of color remain the oppressed and remain excluded. 8 minutes and 42 seconds was a moment in time that changed history. George Floyd died with Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin's knee on his neck. He was the oppressor. George was the oppressed. Now, more than 3 years later, the torrent, if you will, has slowed down in terms of the enthusiasm, the having the issue front and center as a part of our lives. But thank goodness for forums like this and for Poets Against Racism and Hate that we have a platform where we can address and engage in dialogue through poetry and through academia our concerns about the continued state of racism in our country. Some of the initial reforms that did take place have been tweaked or rolled back after police complained that the new policies were hindering their ability to catch criminals. As of October 2022, governors in all but 5 states had signed police reform laws. Many of those laws gave police more protection as well. More than a dozen states passed laws aimed at broadening police accountability, and 5 states only passed new police protection. Shortly after Floyd's murder, the Democrats introduced the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2020 to improve oversight and training and to restrict tactics such as chokeholds and use of excessive force. My hero, John Lewis, was one of the catalysts behind that, and as he was often referred to as the conscience of the Congress. I was very moved when Mayor Bowser in Washington, D.C. established Black Lives Matters Plaza, and that was one of the final sites that John Lewis visited prior to his death in June. Unfortunately, the House has passed the bill 3 times, but it died in the Senate as a result of bipartisan negotiations led by former Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass, Senator Cory Booker, and Senator Tim Scott. It collapsed because of disagreements over several provisions, including whether to end qualified immunity, a legal protection that shields law enforcement from being personally held responsible for violating the rights of citizens. The Democrats accused Republicans, and continue to do so, of being unwilling to agree to any type of meaningful reform. Finally, the city of Minneapolis on Friday, March 31st, agreed to reorganize the city's police department 3 years after the death of George Floyd. But the changes are designed to reorganize the structure and culture and to address race-based policing. The people in Minneapolis and all across our country deserve to be treated with respect and humanity. The law enforcement agreement provides the framework for lawful, non-discriminatory policing, reduces unnecessary dangers for officers, and hopefully will result in better public safety for Minneapolis. The report that was done right after George Floyd's murder painted a damning picture of policing in Minneapolis. Black residents represent about 19% of the population, yet 75% of the searches from 2017 to 2020 involved Black residents in their vehicles. The insight and painful report that the Minneapolis Human Rights Report released shows how deeply entrenched the policing problems were. Minneapolis is just one microcosm of the problem of constitutional policing in our country. Paying George Floyd's family, his estate, $27 million will not bring him back, and no amount of money really can compensate for a human life. Unfortunately, another Black man has been murdered, Jordan Neely, who died in circumstances similarly eerie to George Floyd's. The difference was that Jordan Neely had a mental illness and was threatening passengers on a New York subway. As with Floyd, the whole episode was captured by a mobile phone video and caused an instant uproar. The difference was that because the gentleman who was subduing Jordan Neely and had him in a chokehold, it felt like it was okay because he was trying to protect the other passengers on the subway. It ushered the Black Lives Movement back into the forefront, and once again, we're calling for police reform. But since George Floyd's death, the public mood has shifted in unexpected ways and upending discussions about policing and public safety. And that was evident in the way that the media and constituents and people in New York handled and talked about Neely's death after the fact. It saddens me that we are still so divided. And I believe that this type of platform, Poets Against Racism and Hate, and the classroom, even though we have some governors who are trying to restrict what can be said in the classroom and what can be interpreted and what can be read, that is an issue, and it's just so disheartening and so unfortunate. But we have to keep up the fight. I refuse to believe that we cannot make a difference. We have to have the ability to be able to challenge our lawmakers, and we have to not selectively forget the incidents that occur. We have to remain vigilant and stay focused and report to the ballot box every time we have an opportunity to vote, because that will change. That can affect change, that can cause change. I believe it. My grandfather was a person who was a big influence in my life, and he believed in voting up until his last day. I'd like to end with a poem that resonates with me and reflects how I feel about still being the oppressed. But even though I am oppressed, I do have hope and I will rise. So the poem I selected for tonight is Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, but like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room? Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing wide, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes? Shoulders falling down like teardrops? Weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wonderfully clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for that stirring call to action, and especially for sharing Maya Angelou's poem. It's a wonderful poem. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to turn to our poets and introduce to you our very first poet, who is here on behalf of Poets Against Racism in the UK, and that is Abiodun Abdul. Abi is a Yoruba Nigerian writer and was the UNESCO Cities of Literature Global Poetry Slam Champion in 2022. In addition to working as an English language lecturer and assessor across the globe, she writes life essays as well as her upcoming autoethnographical memoir polemic, Stained Glass Eyes, a memoir on race, family, and multiculturalism, which encompasses her schooling across Africa, Europe, and Asia. She also writes Yoruba-centered short stories and poetry on social justice, as well as topics celebrating our common humanity. Her work has been published in anthologies. She writes and performs podcasts for literary magazines. She performs at literary festivals and events like the Nottingham Poetry Festival going on as we speak, well, at least tomorrow, and presents at academic conferences. Thank you for being here, Abe.
And thank you, Patricia. Thank you, everyone, for attending this very important event. This event in this together, honoring George Floyd. So this is a message of the first poem I would like to share tonight. George Floyd's cold-blooded murder in 2020 by racist US police shook the world into marching for Black lives, asserting we do indeed matter. But many other Black people have been fatally abused by law enforcement across time and on different shores, such as Yoruba Nigerian David Oluwale in 1960s UK. So my first poem is bilingual, Yoruba and English, like David and me, and is called Onokikuru, A Bridge Pathways. Echo hometown baby, echoing my namesake. Oluwale, the Lord has come home, sanctified child. Beloved David, anointed with divine promise. How bound, how stowaway, blessed waters taking me further, riding floating temples to new life adventures. On British shores with Atlantic cousins, my tailor-made tailors leading to Leeds. Bold colors appreciate fabrics, yet depreciate skin? What exclusive madness is their blurred vision, now truncating my senses through truncheon hallucinations? granted asylum from Menston Asylum, jobless, homeless, divinity on the margins, rough sleeping voyager staying in my lanes. Huh? Police peacekeepers harass my peace? Why? Asylum revoked, drugged up electric shocks, blurred echo. Echo. The Lord has come home to hellish streets. Shielded demons war my celestial being. Groin kicks, piss takes, acid spitting racist edicts. Prostrating pavement headbutt penance? For what offense except melanated virtue? Badged monsters badger air into my lungs, the river air. Murky waters muffle witness voices and whitewash crimes. Diluted justice sends me on heavenly tides. Though righteous resistance ripples forever forward, my divine promise bridging hopeful pathways home. Like that. Okay. So, the message of my second poem: human beings should be loving and respectful to all of God's children. Yet melanated people are often treated with the opposite sentiments in the West and beyond, with hatefulness directed at our loving hearts, leading at times to deep existential confusion. So my second poem is called Horizon, and it's about misaligned identities. I was born in this foreign land. My home lies south across the seas. Across the dry Sahara sands, there's a land that holds my first family. A land of warmth and a land of love, so many thousands of miles away. And I know that when the time is right, I'll go back there to die someday. But there was a time when I was unsure if I ever wanted to return to my home. After all, it was this foreign land throughout my life that I had known. It was here that I took my first step, grew my first tooth, said my first word. It was this place I learned all I knew. It was also this place that I first heard racism, a term alien to me, a compulsion I truly did not understand. It was from that point that I began to realize that my life would not go as my innocence had planned. I hated the darkness that engulfed my skin, as did those around me who cringed at the sight. I only ever wanted to be treated the same. So for this obligation, I had to fight. And through my fight, I lost my pain as I began to see through all the rage something very dear which I almost lost: the spirits of my fathers and my heritage. Yes. With this in mind, it became clear whatever rainbow color that we might be, well, we all have good and we all have bad. This system is called humanity. It was this system that helps to cure disease, and this system caused the two great wars. When hate is in control, it brings pain. So I have learned to love as I have never before. Now the past inspired this knowledge in me, and I hope to take it very, very far. I'll teach it to children all across the world before I join my first family, the Yoruba. Thank you. Quick sip of water there before the message of my next poem. First-hand trauma from abusive experiences is a difficult emotional landscape to navigate. Now, second-hand trauma, hearing or seeing the maltreatment of others, also harms our psyche and hurts our hearts. We must strive for love to realign our equilibrium towards inner peace. So my third poem is called Ride the Waves. It's all about soul replenishment. Close your eyes and you'll see the light, which your spirit shines through the night. As you gaze afar to your northern star, no pain shall hinder you in your flight. No. Let wings take you where the feeling on the air is one where no despair can ever smother you. Come, manifest your pride. Feel secure inside. Know that faith can heal through and through. Yes. On this day, as you're on your way, ride the waves that guide us through life. As this earth rotates, read the past's templates, climb the heavens, grow through your strife. Breathe. Thank you so much for listening to these poems with solidarity and appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you, Abe, and thank you for those beautiful images along with your powerful words. Beautiful work.
Thank you.
I'm now going to introduce our next poet who is here on behalf of Poets Against Racism and Hate in the U.S. Her name is Maureen P. Medina. Maureen is a Filipina American and the author of My Fears Out Loud and a Pushcart Prize nominee. She hosts writing workshops, including a monthly virtual workshop for Speak the Word, with the goal of healing, strengthening the mind-body connection, and normalizing fear. Maureen advocates for human and non-human animals, asserts that all oppression is connected, and in alignment with the idea that none of us are free unless all of us are free, as introduced by Fannie Lou Hamer. She hopes to inspire the pursuit of collective liberation with her writing. Welcome, Maureen.
Thank you so much, Patricia and Debbie, for organizing, and Michelle and Abby. That was amazing. Before I begin, I invite you all to I would just do briefly, whether you are white or a person of color, I invite you to pay attention to your body as you witness the offerings today and notice how it reacts and lean into it and notice what feels safe and what doesn't. I really think that's worth exploring even outside of this very safe, intentional space. So I'll be sharing 3 pieces today. The first one is called Synesthesia. Synesthesia. The beauty of seeing colors in music or music as colors. The perception of togetherness, for there is no one without the other. So why is it that when you see color, you don't see me? The sun beams down on us, reminds us of its power, but you won't be humbled. You cling to the shadows, and that is darkness I won't tolerate. Because souls fade into a gradient sorted by rose-colored glasses, and they'll burn you to ashes with their pointy hats and sticks or batons and tell you color is wrong. Well, The only time white is right is when it's the blank canvas, a clean slate unstained by your dirty mind. This next piece is called Happy Ending. At the peak of COVID, I began to fear for my safety when out in public or at night. And, I developed this anxiety and realized, how could I have been an ally to my fellow people of color when I'm only now starting to connect with my culture because of the rise in Asian hate crimes? And so Happy Ending is my token piece, the final catalyst to help me return to my roots and explore the history of solidarity among Black, Indigenous people of color. And it was, in fact, a reaction to the shootings in the spa in Atlanta, Georgia in 2021, where 8 people were destroyed in a hate crime. So, happy ending. Happy ending. Is that what you came for when you sought my people out because you had a bad day? Fetishizing my existence and eliminating me simply because you couldn't control yourself? Your white supremacy could not be contained. Shots fired, hatred in every bullet, yet we've died many times before. When you came to our countries uninvited, our beds unsolicited, our cultures that you appropriated and then sold to us as a sign that you were here. Children born from a lack of protection, colonization, is it a justification or an ultimatum? You forced us into your melting pot, watching all the colors become one, dividing us with a gradient. White is right, but yellow is the next best thing. Stand back, Tiger Mom. She vilifies Blackness as though it's dirty, ugly. But Black lives matter, and they are beautiful. We are beautiful. And no, brown is not lesser than, brown is not illegal, brown is not lazy. We are brown too, and we work hard. We provide for our own, and we stop. Tiger Mom won't have any of it. We are not them, she says. We earned our way. Good at math, straight A's, straight hair, typecast. Though we are Black and we are brown and we are Indigenous, we are every single color, texture, and blessing. We are not a monolith, and we are storytellers if we believe the myth of the model minority. Hey, how do Asians name their kids? Just drop a bunch of silverware down the stairs and listen to the sounds they make. Ching, chong, chink, gook. We are the punchline, but we respond with obedience. Loyal to the monster that mocks chinky eyes and seeks to crease in our eyelids without ever questioning how a colorful society can brim with oppression and individual suppression, or how a colorblind society overlooks what it won't put a name to. Racism, xenophobia. How can we call them strangers when we have all met before? Hate crimes, all different iterations of the same sentiment that we are other, we are less than, we are stained by color. Distorted by your concentration camps, cheap labor and conditioning. You pit us against each other and run away without incident. You loathe all things foreign and call us essential while you try to erase us. We adjust and adjust, our assimilation irrelevant to your contempt for all things made in China. Well, the whole world is watching. They know what you have done. They see who you are. They know that you have thrived from our stolen freedom. You are not a disease. You are not the exception. You are not a mental health issue. You are not a disability. You're not a broken childhood, and you are not a bad day. You are our friend, lover, spouse, neighbor, sibling, parent, nurse, doctor, lawyer, judge, and jury, and you are the problem. You are violence perpetuated. You are the stigma. And you, misogynist, white supremacist, colonizer, oppressor, terrorist, you were made in America. And this final offering is called Harlem, and it is a tribute to the original Harlem by Langston Hughes. In white America, where your dreams are deferred, we don't care if you're black, but it's not preferred. Where they dry up, I can't breathe. Put your hands up, I can't breathe. Raisins in the sun, but not too much sun. Racism kills our black sons. All moms were summoned when he called for just one. And they fester like sores. Protesters, test the crowd, make them go wild. Don't run or they'll shoot. Tear gas, blind the masses. Anti-racist, anti-fascist. And hate stinks like rotten meat. Like the 13th Amendment, a claim to end slavery, but always read the fine print. Mass incarceration, black criminalization, and if you speak up, there goes the First Amendment. Until they crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet. He incites violence with nonsensical tweets. Justice for all, land of the free. Dominate, he says, crush his neck with your knee. Inflammatory rhetoric, sanction brutality. And hate sags with a heavy load. A weapon of mass destruction, systemic oppression in tow. Your racism is showing America's about to implode. When windows are broken, it's all over the news, but bring on the lynching, Trump, ready the noose. Arrest the cops that killed Breonna, hunt for George Floyd. 4 centuries captured in 9 minutes, skin color. Yeah, they weaponize it. Silence is violence. So I'll say this out loud. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. What a powerful and beautiful reading. Just catching my breath. And now I'd like to introduce our next poet, and he comes to us in the early morning hours of the UK, Robert Puntin. Robert is a lifelong socialist and social campaigner. His role as a disabled rights activist for over 35 years has taken him onto the streets and into the roads all over the UK. He has stormed Parliament and stood for Parliament. He'd get my vote. He has chained himself to the White House alongside his American comrades in ADAPT, American Disabled for Attendant Programs Today. Since Robert and Manjit formed Poets Against Racism in 2017, they have worked toward using words and verse to bring social justice from the realm of dreams into the real world. Robert is happy that Poets Against Racism has become a responsible export to America. Thank you for that, Robert. And that he works with fabulous poets and activists on both sides of the Atlantic. Please welcome Robert Puntin.
Thank you for inviting me tonight, this morning, depending on where you are in the world. I'm honored to be here representing Poets Against Racism UK. So on with my poems. The first poem was written in response to George Floyd's murder by the police. It's called Fear on the Streets. There is fire on the streets of the frightened cities all over the divided states of America. Terror clouds the faces of every black teenager, feeling the forces of the law will be brought to bear, restricting their windpipes until none can breathe in the smoke-filled air. Bullets fill the breeze, each with a name, or Lawrence, not Mary Jane, Susie, or Jocelyn. No, the names marked on these deadly missiles are black, poverty, and powerless. When you have nothing to lose. When you believe it is your right to rule everything, you will use everything at your disposal to hang on to it. Centuries may have passed, but the culture of slavery remains, and it must prevail. While the slave must rely predominantly on their own kind, the owner ruling class can afford their mercenaries to keep up this misery, keep the slave in its place. So the tension rises, oppressing bills. It cannot go on forever. Something must give. Pressure must be released before the powder keg blows. Yet we all know those with the power, those who light the fuse, will be far away in safety when the explosion blows, killing the innocent, those fighting for survival in those survival of those they love. We cannot stand by and let this happen. Be you black or white, it matters not. It is not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist. It is not enough to be observers of this fight. We must stand up, fight for what is right. For do not be deceived. What happens there today will surely happen here tomorrow. That is as sure as night follows day. Thank you. That is my first poem. My second poem was written for the Black Lives Movement on both sides of the Atlantic, and it's called Don't You Get It? When I hear all lives matter, I want to scream in frustration, cry out in despair. Don't you get it? Whether through ignorance or arrogance, it matters not. Surely you realize we live in an unjust world. When we shout out Black Lives Matter, we recognize Black people are powerless today. When we shout out Disabled Lives Matter, we recognize disabled people are powerless today. When we shout out Women's Lives Matter, we recognize women are powerless today. When we shout out Gay Lives Matter, we recognize gay people are powerless today. When we shout Elderly Lives Matter, we recognize elderly people are powerless today. I could go on, but I'm sure you get my point. If you say all lives matter, you might as well say no lives matter. For saying all lives matter, we are agreeing with the status quo, and I'm sure you agree that is not the way we want to go. And finally, a quick word about my final poem tonight. Since I had took the launch book, Ricky Real, Silence is Not an Option, I have been working with her ever since this, ever since this, and this is one of the many poems I have written to highlight the fight for justice. Please buy and read the book, and the poem's called Sukdev and Ricky Real, Mother and Son. Ricky, I never know you. I can never know you, as I was robbed of the honor when you were ripped from the world far too soon. You were let down by callous, uncaring coppers who saw your life as worthless, your murder as unworthy to investigate. Let down by a legal system that sees everything in violent, guilty, black, and peacekeeping innocent white. Your family lives a life sentence while your murderers roam the streets scot-free, without a care in the world. Through the loss, through the pain, I got to meet your mother. I get to call her colleague, get to call her comrade, get to call her my friend. Sukdev, I never bow my head, worship no one or nothing, yet I honor and respect people like you who will go to the ends of the earth, fight until your final breath for those things and people that you have loved. When your boy was violently taken from your family on that dark October night, you turned to the police for support. They put their resources into putting you under surveillance instead of treating you like a victim. They saw you as a villain. Together as mother and son, you saw the world the light, show our world the fight, the light and fight that brings you and us through the pain to gain justice from an unjust system, state and society. No matter the depth and length of suffering we must endure. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks for sharing all of those insights. And now I'd like to turn to our last poet tonight from Poets Against Racism and Hate, Dee Allen. Dee Allen is an African-Italian performance poet based in Oakland, California. He has been active in creative writing and spoken word since the early 1990s. Dee is the author of 7 books: Boneyard, Unwritten Law, Stormwater, and Skeletal Black, all from Poor Press. Elohi Unitsi, Elohi Onichi, from Conviction to Change Publishing. Rusty Gallows, Passages Against Hate, from Vagabond Books, and Plans, from Nomadic Press. He also has 68 anthology appearances under his figurative belt so far. Great to have you, Dee Allen.
Thank you, Ms. Thrushart. I'm only going to be doing 2 poems this evening within the span of 10 minutes. In acknowledgement of the 3-year anniversary of the police murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. The first poem happens to come from my 6th book, Rusty Gallows, Passages Against Hate. And this poem happens to be based on actual people and events. It comes from pages 80 80 and 81 in the book. But before I go into it, it is an ekphrastic poem. It is based on a piece of artwork, in this case, a photo. A photo which I have contacted Thomson Reuters just to use one-time permission to use this picture for this particular program that we're having for Poets Against Racism. But in order to use the picture for one-time use, I have to pay Thomson Reuters $100 for that one-time use. So instead of showing you that picture, I will describe the picture for you the best I can. The picture was taken by Reuters photographer Dylan Martinez, and it shows a Black Lives Matter protest in the streets of London, England in June of 2020, where 50-something English Black Lives Matter supporter, a tall, muscular black man by the name of Patrick Hutchinson, hoisting a man over his shoulders in a firefighter's hold and carrying him through the crowd. An injured white man who was on the alt-right side, counter-protesting against his side. And he has 4 people around him while he's making his way through the crowd, carrying this injured alt-right white counter-protester. And when I first saw that picture, I thought of the Good Samaritan story from the Bible. So without further ado, here's the poem from Rusty Gallows, based on that one photo. This is called Samaritan. Anyone else would have left that far-right reactionary sprawled on the concrete to bleed out, suffer in his paroxysms of serious hurt, receive disaster of the steel-toed kind, but not you. The Good Samaritan reflex kicked in, wouldn't let you abandon someone in need of help. Distinctions such as friend or foe didn't matter. Whom you saw lying at your feet wasn't an enemy, just an injured man. So you lifted him in your arms, slung him over your shoulder like a heavy sack of laundry, carried him in a firefighter's hold with a cordon of protection around you. Your foe comrades, count them, foe, having your back, moving past a raging crowd and riot cops, with the boisterous sounds of the inner city battleground in both of your ears. Football songs, national anthem, protest chants, flares and smoke grenades. Maybe you thought one dead white man wasn't going to bring back one dead black man in Minneapolis, George Floyd, one dead black woman in Louisville, Breonna Taylor, one dead black man in a Wendy's parking lot in Atlanta, Georgia, USA, Rayshard Brooks. Martyrs from American racial flashpoints. Maybe you thought that injured man's life was more worthy of salvation than stone monuments to previous wars. Winston Churchill's statue and cenotaph. That's England's answer to America's unknown soldier tomb, folks. Descriptions such as hero didn't matter either. You're just a man protecting a neck that wasn't your own. And you wanted equality right that minute for your children, for your grandchildren, for the generations ahead in England and troubled America. If we can get past a misunderstanding and factions, brother, I wish I had your Good Samaritan resolve. That poem was called Samaritan, which happens to be about English Black Lives Matter supporter Patrick Hutchinson, the man who was in that photo I talked about in the beginning. This last poem is called We Resist. Where Black fight back, we resist. Being surrounded by cars. Where Black fight back, we resist. Aggressors dressed the same. Where Black fight back, we resist. The sight of their guns. Where Black fight back, we resist. Harassment at first sight. Where Black fight back, we resist. Being punked into surrendering. Where Black fight back, we resist. The bark of their guns. Where Black fight back, we resist. Falling dead on concrete. Where Black fight back, we resist. Being driven to the morgue. Where Black fight back, we resist. Being planted in the boneyard. Where Black fight back, we resist. Watching families grieve. Where Black fight back, we resist. Watching many tears fall. Where Black fight back, we resist. Any more community deaths. Where Black fight back, we resist. Any more night rise on blacks. Where Black fight back, we resist because it serves us to preserve us. Where Black fight back, we resist because our lives count any amount. Where Black fight back, we resist on a special day. Where Black fight back, we resist every October 22nd. Where Black fight back, we resist beyond this one day. Where Black fight back, we resist the stereotypical criminal profile. Where Black fight back, we resist brutality from the police. And that poem was called We Resist. From this mic to your ears, I'm D. Allen. Thanks for listening. Remember George Floyd on this very night.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you for your energy and your embracing of rhythm and meaning in your work. And that is our last poet for the evening. And I'd like to thank all of them again for that powerful performance they each gave us. Really terrific, yes. I'm sure there are many people out in the Ethernet clapping along as well. So we have the last part of our program designed as a panelist discussion, which I'm really looking forward to. And you see, Michelle is back on the screen. Hello, Michelle. Welcome back. And welcome, Manjeet. I introduced you earlier in the program, and it's great to have you on.
Good morning, live from my kitchen.
Yeah. And thank you for everything you did to help arrange for this evening's reading, bringing your colleagues on board with us. So I'm going to shoot for about 25 minutes here in our discussion, but if it goes a little longer, I'm sure everyone will be happy to hear your thoughts. And it's been such a powerful evening, each poet bringing similar themes but different approaches. Really, I had to catch my breath between each one. Any immediate reactions that you'd like to share first? Maybe start with you, Michelle.
I was just really taken and just, my heart is overflowing right now. Just the language from Abe's poems and the rhythm that she, Dee, and Maureen all used in their recitations. It was just so moving and so it just makes me feel, it's like, okay, I'm stuttering now because I can't get all of the words out fast enough. But this is powerful.
Manjeet, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, brilliant. I'll just read you some of the internet comments from viewers, and some of them are fantastic. It's an incredible. Congratulations, Michelle and the poets. Fantastic. I got chills from through her big brown eyes. Roz, Maureen and Dee, I'm so glad you're amongst the poetry family. Thanks to all the poets tonight for sharing the material. It's powerful. This has been a powerful night. I mean, they're the general comments in which we all agree. You sometimes have to take time to get your breath back and absorb the quality of poetry and politics in such a small period of time. I almost feel we need to be getting placards out and marching. I
Yes.
feel like we're ready to, I don't know what time of the morning it is here, but it feels like it's a call to arms through poetry. And that is absolutely fantastic through all of the different styles and the individual journeys. It's great. I feel like I know the poets. I feel like I know, and they gave a slice of their heart to the evening, and that's fantastic. And I'll come on to some of the lines that are going to haunt me while I sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true, very true. And the times that I've talked with you, Manjeet, you've always stressed that it's about emotion and it's about themes and it's about a call to action. But what makes it compelling is the poetry itself, the power of poetry, the power of using language and poetic forms.
Yeah, I think poetic words sort of leave a bigger stain on your mind and on your heart than a speech, which you can either take or leave. Poems you can't, and you're blessed with the fact that it's the daylight robbery. We're taking away people's poems that are with us now forever, and you feel like you've taken a personal gift from each poet with their poems. And so that the power of poetry politically, it makes people digest politics in a broader sense, as does music. But I think that we should never forget that our politics come through our poetry, and that way round, because it has a powerful impact.
Words are powerful, and you can't, once they're out there, you can't take them back. Yeah. And folks need to hear and absorb what's being said and the words that were said tonight, because we have so far to go and we've just not we've not made the progress that we should have, or that we can, and that we're capable of. And I think that these words display the hope and the possibilities that lie within us if we would just allow ourselves to absorb them.
That's so true. And your opening comments really brought home how far we haven't come since the murder of George Floyd and all of the other atrocities that we've all witnessed. And I think it's important for us to keep that in mind. Because part of what I sensed in the readings tonight was not just the hope, but also the frustration about how long it is taking, and how we continue to see the same challenges over and over again. Mm-hmm. Michelle, with your background in language and culture, it must have been especially fascinating to listen to Abe and her multilingual approach to words. You could hear the music of the Yoruba language in her speaking, and even the opening lines of her first poem, Echo Hometown Baby, echoing my namesake, Oluwale. I wonder what your thoughts and responses were to Abe's poems.
My first thought was, I was hoping that I could hear it in a Yoruba, even though I couldn't understand it.
Yeah.
Because it was just so melodic, and it's so soothing in a way just to hear someone else speak and help us to embrace and to step out of our comfort zone and go beyond what we know, or what we feel comfortable with. And because I teach pre-service teachers, as I was listening to that, I was thinking, they were like, well, we don't understand this. That would be their response. We don't understand what she's saying. But my response to them has been, and will continue to be, that you've got to respect where a person comes from, and to get to know your student, you have to get to know them and their background. Mm-hmm. So, all of that, the teachable moments were going through my head.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. And I've often heard, to really understand a culture, to really understand a people, understanding their language is important. It's important. I'd like to think that even if I'm listening to poetry in a language I don't understand, I would respond to the emotion of it. I would respond to the musicality of it.
Yes.
And I am confident that would be the case if and when we hear Abe read in Yoruba. And Manjeet, have you ever heard her read in Yoruba, or have you only heard her in English?
No, just in English. But again, we heard today, we've been to the launch of the Nottingham Poetry Festival, and we heard a poet read in Portuguese. And you didn't need to know Portuguese. You just needed to have your ears open to the rhythm, the intention, the emotion of the words. And that's what poetry can do beyond language, is you're back to that communication that's from the heart. And I think the Abe has an ability to slowly, gently bring you into a painful place, which is a brilliant art to do as a poet, because she leaves you with words. I mean, this badge monsters is a brilliant description of the badge monsters we've all met in our lives. You know, racism is a term alien to me. You know, the surprise that racism existed, that first time when you realize you're different and you did nothing to create that. And through the fight, you know, I lost my pain. There's so many lines and words, but that ability to, one, you're having a personal communication with the poet, but then she grapples with those political issues, the relationship of her journey, where she's come from, where she is, where she's going, and back and forth. It's really incredible work, and it's a privilege to listen to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Michelle. Yeah.
No, I was just thinking too that it's just such a wonderful way, without being political, in air quotes, to get a point across, and that if we can emphasize listening as opposed to so much talking, that we can make progress as a people. And, you know, abandon all of the, it's a foreign language, abandon that thought and that theory, because it's about the words. And I know I'm repeating myself, but it's about the words, and it's about the feeling. And what I'm walking away with tonight, I'm just so full and just so grateful to have heard these wonderful people, and to be able to take that and use that as a tool in the classroom.
Yeah. You know, Maureen was another one of the poets who talked about being on a journey, you know, having her sense of herself awoken when she started to see a rise in anti-Asian activity and hate. And, you know, she also, in her poem Happy Ending, talks about racism being very broad, about being stained by color. White is right, but yellow is the next best thing. Brown is not lesser than. And I know in the UK, Manjeet, talking with you, racism is a broad enough term to embrace a number of social justice issues, including the plight of the refugee. I wonder if both of you might comment on the way Maureen approached her journey and some of her words.
Yeah, and I loved, again, you know, we're fighting over stealing lines, which is brilliant poetry. Some of the lines, you know, burned to the ashes with their pointy hats and sticks and batons till the colour is wrong. I mean, we've all been against those batons. It's almost like the description of the fight of existence, to being recognised, to exist. The line "we've died many times before" triggered my thought about Claude McKay's poem "If We Must Die" in the 1920s. So there's almost like a subconscious or conscious link to great poets of the past into the future. And, you know, silence is violence, is beautiful. Do nothing and we're gone. Stand up, get up, and that thread runs through. And if we do nothing about the persecution of refugees in Britain, asylum seekers, Mexicans in the United States, Latino racism, if we do nothing, if we are silent, they've won. If we scream at the top of our voices with every tool we have, then we're on the march. And Maureen, Poets Against Racism is safe in the United States. She's brilliant. And with that energy and passion, she's a very, very powerful performer. So again, a privilege to hear her work. But absolutely right. At the moment in Britain, the treatment of refugees, the language against refugees, illegal humans. Where have you heard that before? Subhuman. Where have you heard that before? 1930s, Hitler. And we have to stand up to the language, and poetry replaces the bad words with the good words. That's what we need to do.
Yeah. Michelle, what were your reactions to Maureen's poem? Anything you want to share?
It just reminded me of the feeling of isolation that we had during the coronavirus, and how it became a reflective time for me personally. And I think that working at home and being isolated caused some people to think and to realize privileges they have, what safety nets were, things that were in place for them that they hadn't had to think about before. Being able to, the haves versus the have-nots, being able to order food online and, not have to worry about how you were going to get out and get that. But on the flip side of that, I also saw a lot, and I think that's reflected in Maureen's poem, a lot of the racist undertones that existed throughout that time, and I think still exist. It's easy for when somebody says, "Oh, I'm not a racist," and I think that you protest too much when you have to tell me what you're not. Those types of things came out during the COVID period. But I appreciate the fact that she specifically addressed Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, because hate is just expanding like bad weeds. And so much that we have to tackle, that we just have to keep up this fight and continue to spread the word.
Yes, exactly. And we need the courage and the energy and the support to do that.
And I found that.
Go ahead.
I was just saying that I found that interesting how, and again, D. Allen, how he approached hate through Samaritan. A different angle on when you're faced with hatred and you face it with humanity. You show the opposite of what hatred is in the most volatile circumstance. And the brilliant to see the poets sharing the chat on the lines they like from each other. Just a man protecting a neck that's not his own is the symbol of humanness. And to resist being planted in the boneyard will keep me awake. We are. If we don't win, we're in the boneyard. Let's be absolutely clear. If we don't stop racism, it's a ticking time, and I love that line. But again, dealing with those powerful words and the energy was fantastic from all the poets. They should really be so proud of themselves.
Yes, so true. I had the chance to introduce you, Manjeet, earlier as the co-founder of Poets Against Racism, but also introduced Robert as your colleague there. And I know that you and Robert have collaborated for many years. I've seen pictures of you on the street together, on stage together. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what he read tonight and his track record as an activist, and then ask you, Michelle, to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, Robert, it's an absolute, there's no secret. I think he's brilliant. I'm technically in love with him. And that's great because, as a poet, he's brilliant in terms of being straight to the point, points at the people who are responsible, takes power on, leads to the government, takes the torch away from the poor and shines it onto the rich and the rulers at the top of society. Any government in the world should be absolutely petrified of Robert Hunton, because he's coming for you. And his poetry is brilliant, but that drive in the poetry is from, the line, it's not good enough to be non-racist. You have to be anti-racist. You have to do something, not just say, I'm not a racist. That's just being human. To be an anti-racist, to be a fighter, is to where we need to get the march. And he says that clearly. His campaign and poems, he's done so many poems in support of Sukhdev Reel and her family, for Ricky Reel. He's part of that family, and to have Sukhdev Reel read one of his poems is an absolute brilliant achievement, an honour. But I'll tell you one thing, Robert is a leader. When Robert is on a demonstration, he parks his wheelchair in front of the police and we all park behind him. Because if Robert's not moving, nobody's moving. And I've been on demonstration where he's at the front, not at the back of a march. And that's the thing about Robert. The drives, the next thing to do is to, every time we see injustice, we try to think of ways to support. So all our gigs will raise money for refugees, Care for Calais, Refugee Support, Refugee Forum. So, and I can't speak highly enough of it. An absolute honour to call him a brother. And that's the other thing. And there's a thread through the comments. A poetry family. You keep on meeting new members. Tonight, this morning, you find people across the United States, different states, in the UK here, and you go, oh God, you're there, because I thought I was going mad on my own. And this is the way to link. And Robert, I'm so glad I found Robert, and we linked up, and we set up Poets Against Racism. It's one of the most, it's the best thing I've done politically for a long time, and I'm very proud that we've got an organisation, Poets Against Racism and Hate, Poets Against Racism in the UK. And one day maybe we'll all be in one room that celebrate what we've achieved. It maybe just as a stopgap, and then get on with the next battle. Right. Robert's a genius.
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. And what struck me about the poem was not the distinction between one life, but that all lives matter. And that is another way that white supremacists try to divide, to divide and conquer. Well, you're emphasizing Black lives and only Black people count, or blue lives, only blue people, blue people, police count. Yeah. And that's not what we're about. We're about saying that everyone has worth. Everyone should be respected. And no matter what, you just have to give every, I don't know if I can be religious right now, but I'm going to go ahead anyway and say, we have to give God the glory, because he has made us into who we are. And we can't allow the darkness and the evil to consume us and to dull our lights. And I thought that poem, just emphasizing every type of person, it just illuminates who we are as a people, and it illuminates what we stand for.
Yeah. And it comes back to that line, if you say all life matters, you're doing nothing to balance inequality. You're going, do nothing. All life matters. Forget it. Move on. A chip on your shoulder. It's not a problem. Racism doesn't exist. And that's why you have to point it out and say, we live in an unequal world. But Michelle, I'll come back to something you said right at the start of the evening. The far right in governments, in legislature, in schools are on the march, in terms of restricting the right to talk about diversity and inclusion and racism and anti-racism. The idea that you can almost say that's political, don't talk about racism, but let's talk about kings and queens and the empire and colonialism and how America was born. That's not political, that's history. But if you talk about the people who have suffered under the struggle, That's political. Interesting shift to
Mm.
Yes,
talk
particularly
about our version of history.
after the 1619 Project was produced by Nicole Hannah-Jones and became so controversial. And now it's like, we don't want to talk about slavery in schools because it's going to harm the children's psyche, but it is still a part of our history. But we want to pick and choose what history can be taught. And I can still go back, for personal instances of experiencing racism and being discriminated against. And so, that's where I'm trying to do the balance with academic freedom and why I'm studying it. Because what can I say if I'm bringing my own experience? But if we're saying that, no, you can't, if the government is saying, no, you can't do that, then where does my freedom of speech come in? Where does my, what I'm able to teach, if it's related to my discipline, come in?
Mm-hmm.
And it's becoming more and more controversial. And, it's almost like I'm afraid to look at the news some days because you never know what's going to be the next thing that's going to be said or what's going to be banned. And
right. I mean, just on the complaint of one parent in a Miami-Dade school, Amanda Gorman's book was removed. The poem that she read at Biden's inauguration. I mean, that one parent, and the book was removed for further study. So that's a perfect example of what you mean, Michelle.
Yes.
And that's why we need to the poets going into schools here. I go into schools and I can walk into a classroom and the young people are looking at the floor. I take the Poets Against Racism placard out and their eyes light up and they go, wow, let's do something about racism. And then they open up. And so I think it's so important to use our opportunities, where we can to use poetry to open up doors in workplaces, in Congress, in Parliament, in schools, and because it's a way in. And the little point about the poets tonight, sometimes we forget ourselves in our poems. We forget to include ourselves, and the poets tonight have all given a slice of themselves in their journey, in their poems. And sometimes I, as a political activist and a political poet, I sometimes get on with the journey of the campaign poetry and forget my own feelings in my own poem and the impact it has. And that goes back to the point is such a important gift to share your political and personal emotional feelings through poetry.
That's a wonderful point.
Yeah, and then your slogan on Stop Stealing, poetry is power.
Yeah,
it absolutely is.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point, that each of the poets were there present with their own experiences, and that just added to the authenticity and the depth of feeling that they shared, without question. That's a really beautiful point, Manjeet. One thing I would want to say is I'm so struck with the amount of activism that Poets Against Racism in the UK engages in. So not just readings, not just writing, but as you mentioned earlier, protesting, parking yourself in front of the police, parking yourself across the street from, the extreme, white supremacists or the right wing that you face. Anyone following your page or the Poets Against Racism group or Stand Against Racism group will see this activism. It's almost daily. And it really reminded me of Dee Allen's poem, We Resist.
Yeah.
That call, that powerful, almost incantatory, litany. We resist, not unlike Maya's We Rise, the same type of litany.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that Dee does his own T-shirts. I mean, that slogan, We Resist, it'll be, I'll buy one of his T-shirts with that on. It's an absolute call to rise, a rallying call, slogan for every placard. And that's so important. And that is critical. But it's also calling out, tonight I mentioned in Britain, we have a Home Secretary. In Britain, we have a brown Prime Minister, a brown Home Secretary coming out with racism. I call Suella Braverman is a Home Secretary. She's got brown skin, but she's got a white supremacist heart, and she persecutes refugees. So that it's interesting how we have to get the concept of racism beyond colour. It's a tool that governments use to take the attention away from themselves and their crimes. So as poets, we have to, as Robert does, as all the poets have done today, shine a light on the injustice, and it's so critical. Again, a privilege, absolute privilege to be in this event.
Right.
Yes.
Well, Isabella Wilkerson made the point after there was an incident having to do with violence against a person of color, and the police were also people of color. And her point is a caste system does not rely on color to be enforced.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you have a system where people will use policy, right-wing policy, whatever the color are, and do that and use it against refugees, and that's exactly what's happening in Britain. But yeah, that's why we need to be standing up and fighting back at it wherever we see it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally agree with you. I'd love not to get one of these shirts as well, saying we resist. Yeah. I resist because the words are just so powerful, and we can just continue our fight.
Yeah. So I think.
Hi, it's Debbie Allen. I wasn't supposed to make an appearance tonight, but I am because I think Joe's screen locked up.
Yes, I think she is.
I think Joe might be trying to leave and come back in. So if she does, she can take back over. But we're actually at the kind of the end point for the panel discussion. And so thank you, both of you guys, for all your wonderful contributions you made to the discussion and Michelle, your opening remarks were fantastic. And so as long as I'm on here, I'm just going to say thank you to all the poets and how wonderful they were.
Brilliant.
Oh, great. Patricia's back. Okay, yes, awesome poets. And I'm going to put Patricia back on and let her take it from here, hopefully.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. I'm at a hotel using their internet because I live in the woods and it's awful, but apparently even the hotel has its glitches. Well, are there any other closing comments that either of you would like to make as we wrap up here, Manjeet or Michelle?
I would just like to say that this has just been an honor and a privilege to be with the two of you and in the presence of the awesome poets.
Yeah.
And that I feel motivated in what I can. My head is spinning, and so after we get off the call, I'll be writing into my syllabi what some of these thoughts that I can add into my classes for the fall.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah.
I was going to plan to go to sleep. It's merely 1:30 in the morning, but forget that. I think it's impossible to come down from such a brilliant experience. Again, the way you have to absorb the poetry, it takes a while to digest what you've just heard. And to have the quality of the poets, they're absolutely brilliant. We've created a family, and that family of poets, it's more than a family, it's an army. It feels like an army. And we're on the march. And congratulations to Poets Against Racism and Hate in the USA. It's an honor to have you as colleagues and in the fight against racism, but also spreading the highest quality of poetry, I've got to say. It's been brilliant.
Thank you. Well, thank you both for sharing all of these thoughts and for being a part of this wonderful and very thought-provoking and moving night. Before we conclude, we do want to share a word about allyship, a very important concept. The writer Roxane Gay, one of my favorites, defined it this way, and we've heard echoes of this in the poetry readings tonight and in the panelist discussion. We need people to stand up and take on problems born of oppression as their own without remove or distance. We need people to do this even if they cannot fully understand what it's like to be oppressed for their race or ethnicity, gender, sexuality, ability, class, religion, or other marker of identity. We need people to use common sense to figure out how to participate in social justice. And so if that appeals to you, please check out the list of resources regarding allyship and the fight against racism that we've created. The link is in the event description on our YouTube channel. And of course, this list is by no means exhaustive. There are numerous credible sources on the internet or in your local bookstore, I hope, and certainly in
I'm going to jump back on again. I'm just going to close out for Patricia. I'll take her off. Hang on one second, everybody. Yeah, so basically, Patricia just wanted to close by saying we're in this together. That's what the list of resources that we've put together on our website, and that you can see a link on the YouTube channel description. For people to take this further, everything you've heard today, take it further. And then also, of course, Patricia wanted to thank everyone again, Poets Against Racism, or Poets Against Racism in the United Kingdom, all of our poets who are here tonight, Dr. Toragano, and everyone else, everyone who's joined us, and everyone who watched this recording going forward. So thank you for joining us, and everyone, please have a good night. Thank you.